You truly believe that this time it is different. Deep down, you are convinced that your generation is somehow smarter, that you are better informed, that you are more awake and aware than every single generation that came before you. But that is exactly, word for word, what they all thought. Right before the world they knew began to crumble. Take a look back at the Spanish Empire. In the 16th century, they dominated half the known world. Great fleets were constantly crossing the oceans. Unimaginable amounts of gold were flowing into their coffers without end. Their religious and cultural influence was truly global. They did not just feel powerful. They believed they were the chosen ones. They were absolutely convinced they were invincible. But while they were busy celebrating their massive expansion, they were silently building their own fragility. They chose to rely on plundered gold instead of actually developing their own industry. They started spending far more than they could ever produce. They fell into deep debt, blindly trusting that the flow of riches would never, ever stop. They were certain their model was eternal. History proved them wrong. Then, consider the Soviet Union, a nuclear superpower of terrifying proportions. They had won the first leg of the space race. They held tight control over half of the European continent. They commanded one of the largest and most disciplined armies on the face of the planet. Back in 1985, absolutely no one could have imagined that only 6 years later, that empire would simply cease to exist. But beneath the surface, the system was already rotten to the core. There was a deep structural inefficiency, an artificial economy held up by strings, constant propaganda designed to hide the reality of their fragility. They truly believed their ideology made them inherently superior. They were convinced their structure was too big to fail. And yet, they collapsed from within. Fast forward to 1999. The markets were shouting a phrase with absolute, blinding arrogance. This time, it is truly different. They claimed the internet had fundamentally changed the rules of reality, that companies did not even need to show profits anymore, that infinite growth was now inevitable. Investors were dead certain they had discovered a brand new economic era. But in the year 2000, the market did not just dip, it plummeted, and thousands of millions of dollars vanished in a matter of months. By 2008, the world's most sophisticated banks were assuring us the system was perfectly stable. They pointed to complex mathematical models. They leaned on prestigious credit rating agencies. They listened to experts at every possible level. They called it too big to fail. And then they fell. It was not due to a lack of intelligence. It was not due to a lack of data or information. It happened because of a toxic excess of confidence in their own stability. That is the recurring pattern of history. It is not about ignorance. It is not about technological backwardness. It is structural arrogance. The grand illusion that the lessons of the past no longer apply to us. Decadence does not begin when a society lacks knowledge. It begins the very moment a society believes it has already understood everything. The moment it stops asking the simple question, could we be wrong? And this is exactly where the mirror becomes incredibly uncomfortable to look at. We believe we are different because we have instant access to any information. Because we can verify data in the palm of our hand in seconds. Because we live in a globally connected society. But access is not the same as consciousness. And having information is not the same as having wisdom. The Spanish Empire had the resources. The Soviet Union had the raw power. Wall Street had the mathematical models. Every single one of them had something. That seemed enough to guarantee their stability. And every single one of them was wrong. The question is whether we are so convinced of our own greatness that we think the pattern does not apply to us. Because every generation, right before its fall, believed exactly that. No one ever uses the word collapse while they are still standing inside the building. They talk about transitions. They talk about market corrections. They never ever talk about a fatal structural error. In psychology, we call this the illusion of control. The more tools we acquire, the more secure we feel. But history demonstrates a brutal truth. Complex systems do not collapse because of a lack of data. They collapse because of an absolute blinding faith in that data. Today we believe our technology is a shield. We believe that being interconnected makes a structural collapse impossible. But complexity does not mean invulnerability. It often means accumulated fragility. The generation that believed they were different was not a generation of fools. They were just certain certain the mistakes of the past were dead and buried, exactly like us. The true threat we face is the total loss of historical humility. We are not the first generation with advanced tools. We are not the first to feel more evolved than our ancestors. The only real difference between a generation that collapses and one that manages to transform is the humble ability to recognize the pattern before it is too late. The final question is not about history. It is about you. Are you so sure that we are different, that you will not even consider the possibility that we are not? If this video made you feel uncomfortable, that is good. Discomfort is the very first symptom of true awareness. Subscribe if you are brave enough to question the things that make you feel safe. Because breaking the cycle does not start with a new system. It starts with a mind that finally decides not to repeat it. To dive deeper into this idea, I suggest you watch my previous video. You will find it linked right here. I will see you over there.